day of Sheets' vacation. Hopefully, he's having a great time down in Florida. And we just got news. Okay, so James Harden is out. Now Bruce Brown is out. So all the lineups that I had earlier are just basically scrapped because of this. This is the COVID world we live in, and we're gonna have to make adjustments and deal with it. So pop on in, ask some questions. I'm gonna wait for some projections to update. I will be in Discord up until 7:30, which is when we're gonna have decisions made. KD looked like he was gonna be the one out earlier. Cam Thomas is going to be the obvious guy to play. Boy, that whole game is just going to be a mess. KD, assuming that he plays, is going to have to be like amazing chalk. Patty Mills, Thomas, Claxton. That's the main three I would be looking at from this situation. Also, you have no LMA, so there's that. I've got James Harden currently in basically every lineup I made, so I'm going to have to adjust that. We're going to go Durant. I'm going to go for a new priority list here, starting with Durant, Cam Thomas. And again, we still may have, if we have no Durant, that's open season. I don't even know how we're going to spend all the money, maybe leaving some money on the table, something we can talk about logically doing tonight. Durant, Cam Thomas, Claxton. I'm trying to think of who else we can possibly give the boost to. We'll have better updated projections in a bit. I think Blake Griffin is going to become an amazing play, actually, and Patty Mills. It's just hard to deal with. I mean, they're shorthanded as it is already. The fact that we could consider playing a guy like David Duke Jr., just the name alone, the head of the Ku Klux Klan is not the guy I generally want to play. I know this is not the same David Duke, but it's just kind of weird and alarming to see. But we're going to have to try and run some projections and actually get some starting lineups before we can make some decisions on this, because it is going to be a pretty open situation. Blake Griffin, Claxton. I think Griffin is going to become more a part of the offense tonight, just because of without Harden in there, without Aldridge in there. I do think he's going to end up with seeing some minutes. Now, it's a weird matchup because they don't exactly need to play big, because Siakam and Boucher, you could sort of get away with playing the Kevin Durant almost at center type of thing. This is going to be a weird situation. No two ways about it. Weird stuff, of course, right as we come on air. Harden is out, Kevin, so make sure you update yourself. James Harden and Bruce Brown were just announced out because of the protocol. So I'm going to assume that they play Harden tonight, regardless of whatever's going on with him, unless he literally can't play because of some sort of protocol. So I'm going to have to edit all my lineups after this. That's fine. We've got an extra, just to make sure we have an extra, 56 minutes till actual lock. So these guys are all over all my lineups. I'm going to have to rebuild. We're going to get some new projections updated. I'll get to those things in a bit. But it's going to be a weird slate, and there's probably going to be weird stuff on the late slate. Initially, it felt like JaVale McGee. Durant I have I have him as probable. I didn't have him as in yet, but if he's in, that's great. I mean, we're playing Durant. It's not really much of a question. Now, can you fade him in some tournaments? I think you can. I think if you're going to do that, you want to play Patty Mills. Probably Patty Mills and Blake Griffin and Cam Thomas. Probably all three of those guys if you're not going to play Durant. Kevin Durant is in, as we just got the note, so I appreciate you guys were one step ahead of my updates, so I appreciate that. What's up, K9 Bronco? Eric, give me a few minutes before. Hey, buddy, give me a few minutes before I tell you my favorite cheap guy on the Nets, because this is a weird situation. I mean, you have basically everybody out for them. The one who stands out as potentially being like, who can you run offense through? It's going to be KD, obviously. So Durant's going to be the automatic. Cam Thomas is going to be nearly automatic for me. Patty Mills is a great tournament play. Blake Griffin is a guy who can actually create some offense and do some things. And this is a game I still expect to be very competitive, even without Harden. So those are guys who are priorities. Claxton, maybe you don't need necessarily the 3,100 anymore. And I think it's still worth it to potentially, again, they don't need to play real big in this lineup. And we don't know about DeAndre Ayton, they didn't play him last night. You're going to play him in a road game tonight. Does that make sense? I don't know, man. I feel like I'm just a little bit leaning towards I still want to take the JaVale McGee shot, but is it even worth it anymore? The only thing is with McGee, he can put up like 40. If just one of, honestly, if we have the other backups gone too, which is a possibility, you have no DeAndre Ayton. I think that's something I'd still want to go to. So right now, I'm going to say Cam Thomas for safety is probably the best bet you have to go there. But I will be playing Thomas, Durant, Patty Mills, Blake Griffin, at least 3 of those guys probably in the majority of my lineups. It's really hard to get, too much better value, especially in a pretty good game pace environment. I initially really liked Brooklyn to win this game, even without Durant. But when you take Bruce Brown out of it too, and you've got no Aldridge as well, and it's just an interesting situation. And then you've got the great Knicks value. So it's like, how do we spend money the right way tonight? And that's really going to be the question. I think Chris Paul may end up being part of the answer, and that feels weird to me too, because it wouldn't shock me if he got limited, if not, probably not scratched on a back-to-back because there's no Ayton. But if he's limited, I mean, Cameron Payne is a guy who can actually do everything for them. So they may not need as much out of CP3. I think that Damian Lillard, who I wasn't really considering as a strong option, has become an extremely strong option because of this value. So I'm going to put Lillard as another guy we're going to consider for priority. And the main thing it's going to do is going to allow us to take that weird shot on Steph. Now, there's a lot of narrative-driven things. He's going to break the record for three-pointers tonight. It's almost without question. He's one behind, unlike how often does Steph not make a couple threes in the game. And once the crowd starts going and he starts getting him on, what if he has one of those big quarters? You could see it being one of those other just like outrageous performances by him. Not to mention, they don't have anybody who can guard him. I mean, nobody does really, but like none of these guys, like Quickly, Rose, Burks, who the hell is supposed to guard him? So I think that it makes those guys, and they're going to end up being a lot more popular than I initially hoped that they would be, thought they would be, because without Harden, it actually does change things quite a bit. Because as much as Kevin Durant is an awesome play, I don't think he's as sure of a thing as Harden to put up like 60 in this spot. Now, he still probably does. He's still the guy you want to prioritize. But I've got so many priorities, I don't know what to do with them. I got Steph, Durant, and Lillard at the very top end. I think Julius Randle, who I was going to actually fade because people are looking at it, they're like, oh, 9,200 Julius Randle, a good matchup because it's Golden State who plays fast. I don't want a part of Julius Randle against Draymond Green in general, but Draymond Green, who knows what's even going to happen with him? Like, it's a back-to-back for them too. So it's kind of like, I think I would probably side with Lillard. I feel weird saying it, but I feel like I'd side with Lillard, Steph, and Durant as the payups over Harden. I'm sorry, over, excuse me, I just mentioned his name, Julius Randle. They are shorter-handed. They're going to need some more offense. I think Derrick Rose is the most obvious, Quickly right behind him, and Burks. Those 3 are whatever order you want. I think Evan Fournier is the one who gets overlooked, and there's no reason he can't outscore Quickly here. So I think Fournier is a guy who we can look at as another potential source of like, okay, maybe we can get 35 out of him instead of the 25 out of Quickly. That's definitely a path that could exist. You also get the weird guys who, like on other slates where there was no value and whatever. Nerlens Noel and Mitch Robinson could both have monster performances here, so no one's going to play them. So they're your sort of off the board guys. But I really, really am going to end up with a lot of Patty Mills, I think, at the quote unquote overprice. I just think he's going to have to take shots, and I'll just play the guys who are going to continue to take shots and run offense. And maybe he doesn't look like the sexiest play in the world at 5,400. But I think that's what you do, and I think that Blake Griffin's what you do. And let's see what the starting lineups come out as. We should have that decision made before lock. And I keep saying this because people are asking me questions, but I don't see it. Make sure to @ me when you do it on our Discord, because we're going to have a lot of decisions to make in the last half hour today, and I need to figure out how to rebuild all my lineups, because I literally built a bunch of shell lineups, and basically all of them had James Harden in them. Basically, most of them had Bruce Brown in them, and now we're going to have to sort of reassess all of that. Cameron Johnson, I don't see the reason why any of us would play Cameron Johnson tonight. Like, just to be honest, the only reason I could justify Cameron Johnson would be because the ownership, where he was going to have some, will be off, like basically completely gone. I would probably rather play Crowder, who will be lower owned, similarly owned. But I think that Crowder is just as good a play as Cam Johnson is. But they're both fine. I don't think we should be focusing on the late game, though. I don't think that's the way we should do this. I think you're looking at spend-ups from the late game and then whether or not we want to play JaVale McGee. That's your real question. I don't think Cameron Johnson, with all this news, is anybody who we should be considering as a priority by any means whatsoever. So that's where I'm at. Noel, Eric Johnson has, okay, yes, this is the kind of guys you can take shots on in big field GPPs. Like, this is what you want to do. You want to speculate on splits like this. You want to try and get weird with it. And that's the argument, honestly, again, for Cam Johnson. But I don't think that he's anything you should be looking at and going, oh, well, now we need to play Cam Johnson. Nothing has happened with Phoenix. that's going to make us need to play Cam Johnson. Is he going to get hot from three? Sure, that could happen, but there's no reason why we should count on that. A better play possibly could end up being Landry Shamet. Like, do we really need that extra value? The only extra value that's really appealing are Cameron Payne and JaVale McGee for me, because I can see 40 out of each of those guys. It's really hard for me to see 40 out of the other guys here. And by the way, the super ultra thin, if you want to get really crazy speculative play, is Elfrid Payton. I don't think that Cam Johnson is as high on the list for me as honestly as those guys are, which is weird, but he's going to have some ownership. And I don't see us needing we really don't need this value. I mean, how many guys from Brooklyn are going to get there with these guys out? You're going to get KD most likely there. You're going to see most likely one of Claxton or Blake Griffin get there. Cam Thomas or Patty Mills or both will get there. So there's your value already. Well, I mean, not KD, but I mean, the other guys are all value plays. You've got Boucher, who 4,800. That's very reasonable, assuming that he's still starting. You've got those guys. Then you've got all the Knicks guys between Burks, Rose, Fournier, and Quickly. Why, or Noel or Robinson, if you want to go that route, why do we need to look for these other guys? The only reason is to look for ceiling. And if you're going to look for ceiling, you need to find guys, to me, like JaVale McGee, maybe not quite as much Cameron Payne, but I do think Cameron Payne on a back-to-back in Portland, good matchup. I really think that he could be really viable here tonight. So that's where I'm at with those situations. Sorry not to have, it's weird. We come on air and then this boom, the big news that changes everything breaks. So it's a little bit hard to have everything perfect. I mentioned David Duke Jr. at the beginning. Look, if your name is David Duke Jr., I'm going to do everything I can not to play you. Okay. We have no excuse. For those of you who don't know who David Duke is, just go ahead and look it up and you'll figure it out. The Grand Master of the Ku Klux Klan. It's pretty weird to have that name and not change it and be in the NBA. I feel like that alone makes me want to go away from him. But no, sure, Duke is obviously in play. You're going to have a potential of Kessler Edwards. I just think that we're getting too thin. Let's stay with the better plays unless we can find a guy with upside with ownership. It was pointed out well last night in our chat, that one of those kind of guys was a guy like Trey Burke. That's the kind of guy you would be looking for these hero type plays and that's on a big slate. On these smaller slates, you really need to get kind of creative. So we don't need anybody else other than the guys who I mentioned, but can we find some other guys who maybe are a little bit off the board? I think we can. So let's talk through some of those other ones. I mentioned Fournier, who is an interesting pivot because I think he gets the lower end of the ownership of all those guys. It also has the forward eligibility, and we have a lot of good point guard, shooting guard plays. That KD is the obvious forward, but then every other spend up you have and value you have is basically point guard. So those guys are going to stand out more to me. I think that I do think Julius Randle is getting overowned tonight, and I think that it's going to continue that way because of this value. I would rather play Steph and Lillard and go that route. Julius Randle, sure, he could have a good game. He's got the worst matchup of all these guys. Chris Paul is another one I like a lot, but again, probably going to get too high of ownership on a back-to-back for me. Are we really going to get the 6 times from him? It seems like a lot to ask for. So I'm going to wait for some projections to update. I'm curious if we can get Sheets to update his projections. I know he's traveling today, so it's going to probably be difficult. But if there's any way you can get his updated projections, I would trust him over any other sites. He's simply the best at this, and he's accounting for what all the other sites are accounting for too. You have other weird plays like Kevon Looney. But again, coming off a monster game, like I don't think we need to do that. I'd rather play Larry Nance. I know it's a different price range. I'd rather play Robert Covington, I think, than Looney. But Looney has been consistently really good at 3,200. Is he a better play than Claxton? It's really close. I think it's really close between the two of them. Close. I don't know. I think I generally like to play guys like Claxton a little bit better, but I could see Looney being a better option tonight. I do think Blake Griffin is gonna end up creeping into more of my lineups than I thought he was going to originally. But Looney, certainly, it does seem weird that the early projections have him projected so far below a guy like Nicholas Claxton, especially when Golden State will have to play fairly big, which should ensure at least some Looney minutes. He's projected to play 19 where I'm looking right now. I think it's realistic that he plays more than that, 24, 23. It is a road back-to-back, so maybe they cut a few of those short. But if he's playing well look, game-winning shot last night for our Bruin, Kevon Looney. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Damian Lee, I don't even know what we're thinking if we're going to play Damian Lee, to be honest with you. Except for, can we get weird with Damian Lee? Now, where does Damian Lee even fit in? I don't even know if he plays, like he might play 10 minutes tonight. He also might play 30 minutes on a back-to-back. I mean, it's possible. The Warriors are a strength in numbers team. I think Damian Lee, I think you're looking at extremely, extremely thin play. So let's talk about players ask me 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s, 4v4s. I don't mind. It's really hard when we're talking about, we literally, every question so far is about probably the worst value plays we could have. But he is a guy who fits that mold of what I'm talking about, where maybe he can get hot and win you something. But I don't know if he can on this slate. Like, it just feels like there's just too much other good value, not necessarily minimum cost value, but it just feels like there's too many other spots of guys who could blow up or certainly will blow up. It's just a matter of finding the right ones. And maybe we do need to take a guy like a Damian Lee. I don't know if Damian Lee is the right answer. I think the better answer is to try to play JaVale McGee and hope DeAndre Ayton's out again. I really do. Until we hear anything further. That's where I'm at right now. Brooklyn's still -5. I know it's weird, but it is a back-to-back, and it's a travel day for Toronto, so I can kind of get it. I actually like Brooklyn still in this game. Remember, we see this all the time in the NBA. These other guys aren't scrubs. They know how to play basketball, and they get their opportunity. They're going to take advantage of it. Some mid-tier guys I really like. Siakam, I really like Scotty Barnes. Nothing unusual there. Fred VanVleet's overpriced. Might keep a little bit of ownership off him. I actually prefer him I prefer him in a vacuum to just the ownership. Well, not in a vacuum. Considering ownership and everything, I prefer him to Chris Paul. In a vacuum, I think maybe Chris Paul has a slightly higher edge here, but I think it's really close. So I would go that other direction personally. Stan, I'm with you, but you know what? We'll know at least beforehand if the game does get canceled, and it certainly is on the table. I mean, this COVID stuff's no joke. I just got my booster shot today, actually, and we haven't seen since the very beginning of COVID the leagues hit quite like this, and it's really crazy how many people are getting it left and right. And honestly, it's gonna change some of our strategy going forward, because if we're gonna have a bunch of early games and late games, and we only have 3 games tonight, but if we're gonna have a bunch of early games and late games, and there's some COVID questions with the late games, I think we're gonna have to start fading some of that stuff, because unless the sites are going to continue to refund, which I think they're going to probably put out a statement that they won't, I think that we're going to probably lose some players. That's what's going to happen. But I hear you, Stan. I just can't make that assessment without knowing more. They certainly have plenty of other bodies. The Durant being available to play announcement is certainly a sign that the game is more likely to play than not. And I'm starting to get some updated projections here. Let me see what I've got for you guys, because I do think that I'm you know me, I'm not a projection junkie. But I do also, we can find the pivots if we see all of the direction everyone else is going to go. Without Harden, it's going to be basically impossible not to play. I really think it's a tough fade with Durant. It's a tough fade Cam Thomas. Those are my top 2 guys. I guess Alec Burks is still in there, but I don't think that's as necessary. I mean, it's not as much on DraftKings as like, oh, we had to play Alex Burks before. Now we still do. No, we don't necessarily. This is what happens every day, guys. And I keep trying to delay my morning stuff to try and get you guys the information that could actually be helpful. And it's frustrating because by the time the slate actually starts, it's like a completely different slate than what we were initially going in with. So it's just about ranking these guys. For me, Durant is the number 1 spend up, and that's not even a question. But it could keep Steph Curry a little bit lower owned than he should be. I love the Durant Steph, play both of them. It's not hard to do. I mean, it's not hard to do. It's doable. On DraftKings, I think that you play a little bit of the narrative situation with Steph. You might get a little lower ownership than you will on guys like Chris Paul, on all the mid-tier guys on Toronto. Then Portland with Lillard is even going to get some ownership, and I think Steph will probably be right around those guys. Now it'll probably be higher than what he's being projected for right now, but I do think those are if you can get those first 2 guys in, then maybe play for the hero home run play of Lillard. If you get those 3 guys in and you get the right value, you're going to have a chance to win tournaments, but you're probably going to have to get weird with 1 or 2 spots to have any way of getting different, because there's going to be so many guys playing the same guys. Don't spend too much money tonight. Do not get too much money invested. It's not a good slate for it. Trust me, just don't do it. Would I play Trent over Burks? I think it's an interesting way to go. I don't think Trent is going to be unowned though either. I think you're talking about maybe he's half as owned as Burks, but they're both in the 50 and 25%, somewhere in that range. Yeah, it's fine. It's totally fine. Yeah, I don't agree that Claxton is the best play at all. Absolutely no reason Claxton has to get there. He's probably going to show up. Look, he's one of the guys, but why is he the better play than any of these other guys? He actually doesn't boost. This doesn't really boost him as much. The Aldridge thing boosts him, but everything else kind of lends itself more to Blake Griffin and KD splitting minutes at the 5. I'm still going to have some Claxton, don't get me wrong, but I don't have Claxton as highly rated as maybe other sites would. And I just don't think it's the right way to go. I think you want to try and find the scorers in that game. I think that you want to try and find even ways to stack the game up. And look, raw points are going to matter here tonight. And there's Nick Claxton has a legit 5 fantasy point in 15 minutes possibility tonight. They don't need to play him. They really don't. And they don't have only 8 guys, by the way. They have other bodies they can play. Just because you don't see them on the projection system doesn't mean they won't play other guys who aren't being projected. If we get official word that they only will play 8 guys, that's a different story. But you've still got, let's see, you've got I've got 10 for them playing tonight. Kessler Edwards, Deron Sharp. I've got 9. Oh, you're right. Well, hold on. Let's see. They've got to update this because there are a couple other bodies I know that they have out there. I just don't know if they're activated. So I need to find the active. If it is in fact 8 bodies, I don't agree that Claxton is the best play. I think he actually is probably one of the worst on their side, but still an excellent play. Just that all of them are excellent plays. So we just have to rate them in that. Lillard might get overlooked with the other guys, but I actually think Lillard and Curry are going to end up in a similar ownership range. If Durant plays Covington over Blake, Durant's playing. Durant's in for all we know. I would say that I would take Blake over Covington right now. The upside is like 40 plus, and Covington just has to hit a bunch of shots. There's nothing special, especially nice happening for Covington that hasn't been going on already. So I would have Covington a little bit lower down the list, unless you have a 2v2 swapped where you can plan to have JaVale McGee later in the day. I do like Covington, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that there's any like outside of Cam Thomas, Kevin Durant, and potentially Alec Burks or Derrick Rose, I guess you'd say one of Burks, Rose, or Quickly. I think you kind of need to start your lineups with those 3, and then you mix in. I'm going to have plenty of Patty Mills and Blake Griffin. I'm going to have plenty of Steph Curry, and I will have some Damian Lillard as well. Probably going to be a little lower on Chris Paul. I actually really like the Cam Payne play. Going to like it a lot less now because of the other value that's opened up, even though it's going to feels too bad. Is 5 nets too many to win a tournament? Probably. You probably have at least 2 on the other side if you're going to do that, and you might even need to hope for overtime. But I think 5 is too many to try to win a tournament with flat out. I think you want to try to pick 4 or 3. Now, can you win with 5? Absolutely, but you need everything to break your way, and there's just a lot of other stuff to go. I mean, let's just say Claxton, for argument's sake, puts up 26 points, and usually for 3,100, we love that, right? That sounds great. Blake Griffin puts up 26 points. You got all those guys right. But then JaVale McGee comes in later and ends up starting for 8 and then puts up 44, which we just saw the other day. Like, what good does it really do you? So I would try to find other ways to go. I think Scotty Barnes is a good mid-tier play, but you're not fooling anybody with these plays. I think that's what people are going to do. They're going to spend up for Durant. They're going to play one of the mid-tier guys, mid to high-level tier. You know, the Scotty Barnes, the Pascal Siakams, the Fred VanVleets. Those are going to be the guys they use. Maybe a little bit of Lillard's. I think they're going to use less of Steph on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I don't think that'll be the case. I would just try to cram Steph in if I could. I think this is a spot where you do play a little bit of a, hey, he gets hot, the narrative gets going, and he's just been missing shots. The truth is, like, he can put up a monster ceiling. Maybe we haven't seen it as much, usually because they blow people out and they play a good team-oriented game. But if Steph breaks the record tonight, wouldn't it be nice for him to, like, the 10 threes are definitely in play. He definitely has it in him. 5 for 15 last night in 3-point shooting, still put up 45.5. 3 for 14 the game before that, 6 for 17. He is shooting 36% this month from 3-point range. By the way, Russell Westbrook shooting 50% from 3-point range this month. No, I'm just kidding. But I don't think that you need to, like, I don't know. I'm going to try to just play the guys who I feel are lower owned in these spots. And I do think that the Durant, Curry with this value, Cam Thomas being the most obvious value, mixing in some Griffin, Patty Mills, and then at least one of the Knicks. And it honestly, if I'm going to play 2 of them, I think I might want Fournier to be one of them because you're going to get low ownership on Fournier. And there's no reason why it couldn't be a Fournier night over a Quickly night, who's going to have literally like 10 times the ownership of Fournier. Now, he's been awful, but I think speculating on him is probably the right kind of night to do it with the RJ Barrett out. Yeah, that's where I'm at. But again, it's not that I love the play. It's just that I'm trying to get different. The name of the game on these 3-game slates is not to try to pick the best play. It's to try to get your guys who you feel are the most sure things and then mix them in with the weird value that maybe other people aren't going to look at. And that's where guys like, I don't mind the Damian Lee idea. It's just not where I would go with it. That would be it's probably one of the last spots I'd go to because the Warriors have too many bodies. Tons of interest in Blake Griffin, assuming that he starts especially. He is a guy that can actually do some things offensively. I don't know how much run they're going to give him, but I'd imagine they'd give him some. I think he'll get some run at the 5 as well, or they'll play Durant at the 5 and they'll play these Kessler Edwards and David Duke guys. I can't believe that guy's real name is really David Duke. At the other spots. Yeah, I do only have 8 bodies currently projected for Brooklyn, and that just feels completely off. I just don't buy it. But I do think if you're playing any lineup, I think fading Cam Thomas would be a pretty bad mistake, probably. I just don't know how to fade that 4K with that much activity and usage. And Patty Mills will be the lowest owned, so I'm going to have interest there. And I'm having interest in Blake Griffin, who will be also a little bit on the lower owned side compared to the others. Oh no, absolutely not interesting. Watanabe, you're only playing blowout angle. That's the way this guy gets there. I love Watanabe. Like he's a fine real player. He's a poor man's George Niang. But why would you play value on a team that has like 12 healthy bodies tonight? And the only time he ever gets significant run is in a massive blowout. Now, if you believe this game is going to be a massive blowout, I would consider it. But also, he did play 25 minutes a season, or 26 minutes, his second highest game of the season last night. So I wouldn't get too excited about the Watanabe play. It is a weird one, so you got that going for you. But I don't think that's as strong. I'd rather play Svi than I would Watanabe, and I don't want to play Svi either. So just throwing that out there. I don't think Watanabe is particularly of interest to me, but maybe you're right. Maybe look, he's a great long. If you're playing 150, of course he would end up in a few percent of my lineup, but he wouldn't end up in much more than that. That's the truth. The Knicks, by the way, are starting Rose, Burks, Fournier, Randall, and Noel. Nothing surprising to us there. I guess we could have thought for a second that maybe Quickly would start, but I had this as my starting lineup the whole day, so I'm not surprised about that at all. Guys, only a couple more minutes for questions. I will be in the Discord to go through it once we get some updated projections. It looks like, as we sort of suspected, Cam Thomas is projecting as like a ridiculously good play. Kevin Durant is projecting as a ridiculously good play. These are not surprising things. I do think they're under projecting Patty Mills a little bit, but not by a ton. I just think his upside is enough to make me have interest. I think Blake Griffin is going to be a really tough fade by the end of this, to be honest with you. You're going to probably start seeing Claxton drop down and Griffin pull up. He's going to project a lot better. There's just no way that he won't be projected to play more minutes because they really don't need to play Claxton. And they don't tend to play Claxton that many minutes. They just don't do it unless they absolutely need a big. And they really don't need him to. I mean, what's his season high? 23 minutes? I know it's a different situation, but wouldn't you just play a guy like Blake Griffin who doesn't get any chances but can play the small ball 5 and fits in where your offense can still flow instead of having a guy who doesn't do anything offensively? Interesting. Anyway, so let's see what we got when we get all this stuff. And good luck to everybody. I will be in the Discord chat, and let's try to make some money today. I know it's going to be a weird slate to do it, but I think we can do it. And just make sure to @ me when you have any questions, because I will try to get to whatever ones I can. Good luck, everybody.